Ever wish you had the perfect comeback ready when someone tries to disrespect or belittle you? You're about to discover 7 sharp, confident responses that instantly silence negativity, letting you reclaim your power and inner peace. Imagine handling toxic coworkers, difficult family members, or even strangers effortlessly, without losing your cool or dignity. Stick around until the end of this video, because the last strategy might just change how you handle tough conversations forever. If you enjoy straightforward, powerful insights into personal growth, emotional intelligence, and mastering life's daily challenges, make sure you hit that subscribe button now. Join our community to never miss out on scripts and tips that can genuinely improve your relationships and quality of life. Life has a way of introducing us to people who seem to thrive on disrespect. You might meet them in your workplace, stumble upon them in your family gatherings, or encounter them when you least expect it, sometimes even among old friends or acquaintances you've known for years. These individuals will test your patience and push your buttons relentlessly, as though your frustration were the prize they're determined to claim. Their entire game hinges on provoking an emotional reaction. They want you to lose control, to get angry, to snap back, so that they can feel validated in their own rude or condescending behavior. But here's the crux of the matter. If you give in and allow your temper to flare, they win. The moment you explode in anger is the moment they gain the upper hand. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the real power lies in maintaining control of ourselves. It's in preserving our composure even when faced with insults or provocation. Instead of letting them see you fume, imagine calmly delivering a precise, sharp response. One so unexpected, it leaves the other person at a loss for words. The beauty of this strategy is in its quiet force. There's no yelling or out-of-control emotional outburst, just carefully chosen words that make them regret ever crossing your path. This approach, while seemingly simple, is deeply rooted in the kind of wisdom you might find in the study of Stoicism, mindfulness, or other life philosophies that emphasize inner calm and self-discipline. When you refrain from reacting impulsively, you not only protect your peace of mind, but also expose their rudeness for what it is, an immature attempt at stealing your emotional well-being. Cultivating such composure takes practice, but it brings immense benefits to your personal and professional life. Whether you're at a corporate meeting, a family reunion, or chatting with friends, mastering the art of the calm, cutting comeback disarms negativity and refocuses the energy where it should be, on your own growth, progress, and happiness. In this newly restructured article, we'll explore 7 powerful comebacks tailored to shut down rudeness on the spot. Not only will you learn what to say, but you'll also understand the deeper reasoning behind each response, how it benefits you, and when it's most effective to deploy it. Think of these lines not merely as burns, but as strategic tools, each designed to uphold your dignity and fortify your mental resilience. Before we dive into the details, a quick note: if you resonate with thought-provoking insights on Stoicism, self-improvement, and navigating life with greater wisdom, you might appreciate a resource that delivers these lessons straight to your inbox. I offer a free weekly newsletter every Sunday, sharing hard-earned lessons, controversial truths, and practical strategies to help you level up. If you'd like to join a community that's all about personal development, the link to sign up is included below this piece, in the same place you'd find my contact information. You'll receive value-packed content at no cost, and you can unsubscribe at any time if it's not for you. For brands or collaborators seeking to reach an engaged audience and create something impactful together, feel free to connect with me via the email provided. Now, let's embark on this journey of equipping ourselves with 7 potent lines that end rudeness before it begins, and let's ensure we do so with calm, calculated strength. The first powerful comeback to consider is deceptively simple. You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it. At first glance, This might sound minimal or even understated. However, never underestimate the effectiveness of a calm, detached response that acknowledges the other person's right to speak but simultaneously refuses to grant their words any influence over your emotions. When someone behaves rudely by mocking your ambitions, belittling your choices, or ridiculing something you hold dear, they're often seeking to impose their worldview on you. It's not necessarily that they believe themselves absolutely correct. Quite often they're attempting to assert control, to dominate the conversation, or to make themselves feel superior by diminishing your confidence. By replying with, "You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it," you accomplish several subtle yet powerful things at once. First, you validate the fact that anyone can hold an opinion. Everyone is free to think or say what they want. This meets the disrespectful person's statement head-on, preventing them from claiming you're trying to silence them. However, the second part of the line flips the dynamic. You firmly convey that, while they may have every right to speak their mind, you have no obligation whatsoever to absorb or internalize their negativity. This refusal to engage on their terms is precisely the opposite of what they want. Rude individuals crave a fight, or at least some sign they've rattled you enough to gain your attention. By telling them outright that you're ignoring their viewpoint, you show that their words carry no weight in your mental space. Another element that makes this comeback so effective is its clarity. You're not entering a drawn-out debate. You're cutting it short with a single sentence. In psychological terms, this move deprives them of what they need, an emotional reaction. Instead of fueling the flames, you calmly close the door on the discussion. This not only preserves your mental energy, but can also leave them scrambling for a way to regain control. In a group setting, such a confident and nonchalant stance often earns you respect from observers who see that you aren't easily manipulated. Over time, consistently using this approach can reshape the way people speak to you, as they realize they won't find an easy target or a dramatic altercation. To illustrate how transformative this line can be, picture a scenario from my own life. Not too long ago, I was working on a significant personal project. I'd poured countless hours into planning, researching, and developing something I believed could have a meaningful impact on both my personal trajectory and the broader community I hoped to serve. Late nights, early mornings, and the willingness to take risks were all part of the process. Naturally, I was excited to share this vision with a longtime friend, someone who I assumed would appreciate the dedication involved, if not the project itself. To my dismay, instead of support, I was met with a dismissive smirk and a cutting remark. "That's a total waste of time. Who's going to care about that?" My initial impulse was to defend myself. After all, I had pages of research and well-thought-out plans. The old version of me would have jumped in to outline every reason why my project was bound to succeed, or at least to prove why it deserved serious consideration. But here's the catch. People who are dedicated to being rude or condescending usually aren't interested in open-minded discussion. Their objective is not to learn, to collaborate, or even to challenge you in a constructive manner. Rather, it's to gain the upper hand by making you feel small. What they want is to see you scramble, to see you get angry and attempt to justify yourself, anything that places them in a position of control. So instead of falling into that trap, I calmly responded, "You're entitled to your opinion and I'm entitled to ignore it." Then I left it at that. No explanation, no further engagement. The effect was immediate and somewhat humorous. My friend was momentarily stunned. Instead of the heated discussion or defensive stance he had anticipated, he got a polite but firm dismissal. Suddenly it was his turn to scramble for a retort, and he found none. The tension in the room dissipated as quickly as it had arisen, and we eventually moved on to lighter topics. But the message was clear. His attempts to belittle my effort were not going to be entertained. On a deeper level, the beauty of this approach is that it underscores your autonomy. You're reminding the other person and yourself that you have complete ownership of your personal journey, your time, your energy, and your goals. Moreover, when others witness your composed stance, it can subtly encourage them to reconsider how they interact with you. They see that if they come at you with pettiness, they'll be met with dignified but unyielding resistance. This comeback is so potent because it thwarts any attempt to rope you into an unwinnable argument. Rude people, particularly those who belittle others, love debates in which they can twist words and feign superiority. If you try to justify or defend yourself against every slight, you'll soon find yourself exhausted, often with nothing to show for your efforts except frustration. By calmly stating that they can have their opinion while you choose not to care, you remove any incentive for continued harassment. People driven by arrogance despise being brushed off because it invalidates the importance they ascribe to themselves. In a subtle yet impactful way, you're telling them, "I am not reliant on your approval or fearsome of your criticism. My path doesn't hinge on whether you think it's worthwhile." In practical terms, you can use this line in a variety of contexts. Perhaps at work, a coworker scoffs at your suggestion during a team meeting. Instead of engaging in a back and forth about your credibility, you maintain your composure and drop the line. "You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it." Then you continue with the meeting, refusing to let the negativity overshadow the actual discussion. Or maybe at home, a relative criticizes your life choices, your career, your partner, your education, or your lifestyle. Family can sometimes be the most challenging as emotional bonds and histories run deep. The same principle applies. Calmly express that you acknowledge their right to speak but have no obligation to internalize their viewpoint. This approach can also prove invaluable in social settings or even online, where faceless comments can carry an unintended sting. A simple, measured response rather than a tirade often takes the wind out of the troll's sails. On a broader philosophical level, "You're entitled to your opinion and I'm entitled to ignore it" resonates with Stoic teachings about control. We cannot change or dictate other people's opinions, we can only control our reaction to them. In that sense, the line is less about insulting someone back and more about safeguarding your mental space. It affirms your autonomy and reminds you and your critics that their hostility or negativity is not a decree you must abide by. True power lies not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. This is why the Stoics emphasize that we should concern ourselves with what is within our power, our thoughts, reactions, and decisions, rather than what others choose to think or say. Moving on to the second powerful comeback, we find something equally piercing but with a dash of humor. "If I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke." On the surface, this might seem like a light-hearted quip, but make no mistake, it delivers a ferocious sting to someone who constantly spews negativity or arrogantly assumes they're the smartest person in the room. One reason this line works so effectively is because it doesn't outright call them dumb or uninformed, though that is essentially the implication. It merely indicates that valuable or insightful statements from them are practically non-existent. I once employed this line on an old classmate, let's call him Ryan, who exemplified a certain brand of overconfidence rooted in insecurity. Ryan's modus operandi was to belittle others in group conversations to bolster his own sense of importance. He'd wait for someone to share an idea, then interrupt with a smirk and a jibe like, "Oh, that's great, maybe if we all had no idea what we were talking about." Most times people nervously laughed or just let it slide, not wanting to escalate the tension, but the lack of pushback only encouraged Ryan to continue, effectively normalizing his disrespectful manner. Then one day he tried to cut me off during a discussion, insinuating that I was far from being a genius in a mockingly sarcastic tone. Everyone in the circle braced for my reaction, and I calmly returned his gaze and said, "Ryan, if I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke." What followed was a quiet, stunned pause, almost comedic if you visualize it. It felt as though time slowed down, and you could see the gears in his head spinning as he realized the weight of what I had just said. He could neither laugh it off easily nor escalate the situation without seeming overly defensive. The group was silent, waiting. Someone else eventually muttered something like, "Ouch," and then conversation resumed, largely ignoring Ryan for the remainder of the chat. From that moment on, Ryan was noticeably more measured in his interactions, at least whenever I was around. The comedic element of the comeback made it more devastating than if I had raised my voice or thrown out an outright insult. The brilliance of, "If I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke," lies in its dual nature. On one hand, it's funny enough that it can be delivered in a playful tone, maintaining a semblance of social grace. On the other, it lands as a direct blow to the other person's intellectual ego. You're essentially highlighting that their contributions to any conversation are worthless. So worthless, in fact, that you couldn't earn even a modest fee if you were being paid for each insightful statement. This comedic, almost whimsical packaging makes the insult more difficult to counter. If they respond with anger, they appear thin-skinned. If they try to laugh it off, they risk reinforcing the idea that they are indeed lacking substance. This comeback also cleverly shifts the power dynamic. People who rely on sarcasm and belittling comments typically position themselves as the unassailable critic. They hide behind cynicism, cutting remarks, or intellectual posturing to avoid revealing their own vulnerabilities. By delivering this line, you unmask their tactic and force them to confront the reality that they've contributed little of actual worth. Their perceived superiority vanishes in a moment, replaced by the discomfort of being the butt of the joke. If the situation arises again and they try to make another rude remark, everyone in the vicinity may recall the previous exchange, further discouraging them from playing the same game. In practical use, this line is especially suited for scenarios where someone is constantly throwing jabs but never actually adding value. Think of the coworker who critiques every idea without presenting solutions, or the friend who loves to tear down your opinions but never offers anything constructive. It's also quite effective in social media settings where armchair experts habitually criticize but produce no meaningful content of their own. The key to delivering it effectively is composure. You never want to appear flustered or overly aggressive. A calm, confident tone enhances the comeback's impact. One might even smile slightly while saying it, reinforcing the notion that you're unbothered by their attempts at belittlement. The third comeback we'll explore is just as strategic, yet it takes a different approach. While the first one, "You're entitled to your opinion," highlights autonomy, and the second, "If I had $1," cleverly points out intellectual emptiness, this next one addresses the core motive of certain rude individuals. They thrive on disrespect. It's not merely a witty rejoinder, it's a declaration of your personal boundaries. It states, in clear terms, that you won't engage in a debate with someone whose main objective is not mutual understanding or problem-solving, but the twisted joy of putting others down. Why invest energy in such a dynamic, especially when it's doomed to yield more negativity than resolution? In the upcoming part of this article, we'll dissect why acknowledging and rejecting disrespect up front can be a powerful mechanism for maintaining your personal peace. You'll see how it can be employed effectively in both professional and personal circles. We'll explore how certain individuals aren't seeking genuine discourse, but simply a chance to impose their will or sense of superiority. Stay tuned as we dive into further examples, psychological insights, and expansions on how stoic or mindful approaches can help you sidestep these energy-draining confrontations. Most of all, you'll learn how to walk away with your dignity and sanity fully intact. Let's now examine the third comeback in greater depth. I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect. This succinct statement packs a powerful psychological punch because it calls out the other person's behavior for what it truly is, a show of disrespect intended to provoke a reaction. There's a massive difference between those who challenge you thoughtfully, aiming for growth or clarity, and those who simply revel in being rude. Some individuals, regrettably, fall into the latter category. They aren't looking for compromise, empathy, or resolution. They simply want to see how quickly they can knock you off balance. The phrase, "thrive on disrespect," captures that dynamic perfectly, implying that their sustenance is the chaos they create. By plainly stating that you refuse to argue with such people, you take away their lifeline, your emotional energy. One scenario that illustrates this well occurred in my professional life. A coworker of mine, let's refer to him as Jake, had a knack for interrupting others, shooting down ideas without offering alternatives, and often resorted to personal attacks disguised as brutal honesty. During a team meeting, I proposed a new approach for handling a challenging project. Before I could even complete my explanation, Jake interjected with a sneering remark, "Oh, so you're suddenly the authority on this now?" The comment was dismissive and tinged with condescension. In past experiences, I might have tried to defend my idea on the spot, inadvertently stepping onto his battleground and fueling his rude behavior. This time, however, I calmly looked at him and stated, "I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect." And then I fell silent. In that single sentence, I was communicating that I recognized what he was doing, attempting to derail me through belittlement, and that I wasn't going to give him the pleasure of a reaction. Why is "I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect" so potent? From a Stoic perspective, it aligns with the principle of controlling our own responses, rather than letting others dictate our emotional state. Stoics advocate focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, and releasing what you cannot, other people's opinions or behaviors. When you inform someone that you will not argue with them because they thrive on disrespect, you are effectively setting a boundary. You are telling them that their attempts to provoke, to demean, or to dominate will fall on deaf ears. This boundary is critical. Without it, people who feed on conflict can drain your energy over time, causing distress and undermining your well-being. Additionally, this line underscores the futility of engaging with someone who isn't interested in actual dialogue. Arguing with an individual who is only focused on belittling you is like trying to have a heartfelt conversation with a brick wall. The wall remains unmoved, and you're left frustrated. By refusing to engage, you save yourself the emotional labor that comes with such toxic interactions. Instead of allowing yourself to be ensnared, you use your composure as a shield. People who seek disrespectful conflict often pride themselves on their ability to push people's buttons. Demonstrating that their tactics won't work on you robs them of that misguided sense of accomplishment. They cannot win if you never enter the competition they've set up. This comeback is especially powerful in environments where discussions can quickly escalate. Offices with competitive atmospheres, social media platforms rife with trolls, or even extended family gatherings where unresolved tensions simmer beneath the surface. Whenever you sense someone is trying to corner you with disrespect or bait you into a squabble that serves no productive purpose, remember that you have the option to bow out gracefully. Instead of leaving them with a chance to ramp up the insult game, you deliver your single line, "I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect," and then withdraw your attention. In some cases, the person may attempt to retort, but your refusal to engage leaves them flailing for an audience. One critical nuance is timing. Use this comeback when you've identified that the other person genuinely seeks to degrade or offend you rather than engage in meaningful exchange. Not every disagreement is malicious. Sometimes people are merely passionate or have poor communication skills. But if you ascertain that disrespect is the actual core, this line is your go-to. It also communicates a sense of emotional maturity. You're not insulting them back. You're stating a self-protective boundary. In a professional setting, it can maintain your credibility and composure. In a personal setting, it preserves your mental and emotional resources. Overall, it's a line that underscores self-respect and invites the other person to reflect on their approach, though whether they do or not is ultimately out of your hands. Next, let's examine your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life. This is a shift in approach compared to the first three comebacks. While "you're entitled to your opinion" underscores autonomy, "if I had $1" uses sarcasm, and "I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect" sets a boundary, this fourth line highlights the long-term implications of someone's rude behavior. It's both a commentary on the here and now, as well as a projection into the future. By telling someone their attitude won't propel them forward, you're essentially pointing out the self-sabotaging nature of their disrespect. We all know individuals who seem to think they're unstoppable while being condescending or cruel to those around them. They may believe being harsh or negative makes them appear more capable or driven, but in the grander scheme, especially in a world that values collaboration, empathy, and mutual respect, such behavior can quickly backfire. Hiring managers, leaders, or even peers are less likely to invest trust in someone who consistently disparages others. Friendships and relationships deteriorate when insults become a norm. In short, if disrespect is your modus operandi, you'll likely find yourself alienated or stuck in career and social dead ends. This line calls that reality to the forefront. I recall a colleague named Mark who exemplified the kind of toxic bravado that this line addresses. In team meetings, Mark made it a point to roll his eyes at anyone else's idea and occasionally tossed out snarky, passive-aggressive remarks. He behaved as though everyone else's input was subpar and not worth serious consideration. Perhaps he believed that by tearing others down, he could rise to prominence or at least mask his own insecurities. However, most of the team found his negativity draining and his dismissiveness outright insulting. One afternoon during a brainstorming session, a more junior coworker suggested a creative solution to a challenging problem. Mark immediately shot it down, saying something along the lines of, "Oh sure, we'll do that once we all decide to stop using logic." The sarcastic comment hung in the air, and you could sense the morale in the room dip. Typically, people would remain silent to avoid confrontation. This time, I spoke up. Looking directly at Mark, I stated in a steady tone, "Your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life." Then I redirected my attention to the junior coworker's idea, engaging them in more questions and refining their proposal. The effect on Mark was immediate. He attempted a weak laugh, but his expression gave away the sting he felt. Over the following weeks, I noticed he became more reserved in his dismissals, at least in settings where I was present. Eventually, word got around that Mark's abrasive demeanor had caught the attention of upper management, and despite his competence in certain technical skills, he was not considered for an upcoming leadership role. This situation revealed something crucial. Respect matters in the long haul. No matter how smart or talented someone thinks they are, consistently belittling others depletes trust and goodwill. Telling someone that their attitude won't serve them well can be a wake-up call. While it may not lead to an immediate change, it plants a seed of awareness, a moment of pause that might encourage them to reconsider their approach if they're willing to grow. What makes your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life powerful is its directness. Unlike more sarcastic comebacks, it feels more like honest feedback than a witty jab. The statement implies that you're pointing out a fundamental flaw in how they conduct themselves. Rather than sinking to their level, you're essentially saying, "Look, the way you treat people is self-defeating. You won't achieve the success or respect you crave if you keep this up. It also removes you from the immediate conflict. Because you're not explicitly insulting them, you're describing a natural consequence of their behavior. This can resonate more deeply than a simple insult, since it speaks to the universal desire to succeed and be respected in some capacity. In terms of when and where to use this line, timing is everything. It's best deployed when someone's disrespect extends beyond an isolated incident and reflects a broader pattern. If you notice someone consistently undermining team morale, insulting peers, or scolding family members in ways that cross the line from criticism to cruelty, this comeback can serve as a pivotal statement. You're not telling them you're worthless or you're doomed, but you are underscoring that their chosen approach is leading them towards social or professional isolation. And while certain environments may temporarily reward aggressive or domineering traits, those rewards rarely endure. So the line effectively calls attention to the unsustainability of their method. Whether in a professional environment, as with Mark, a family setting where someone believes tough love equates to constant belittlement, or a circle of friends where one individual repeatedly puts others down, consider delivering this line in a composed manner. It's neither comedic nor purely dismissive. It's a statement of future consequences. This approach echoes the Stoic principle of understanding cause and effect. If you sow seeds of disrespect, eventually you reap loneliness, alienation, or missed opportunities. Giving someone that reminder might push them to pause and recalibrate, assuming they have enough self-awareness to see past their ego. We now come to the fifth comeback. This conversation was over before it even started. Like some of the previous lines, this one functions as a swift and decisive exit from a heated or unfair exchange, but it's distinct in that it immediately signals there will be no debate, no further argument, and no emotional investment on your part. When someone is being rude just to spark conflict, they're counting on your continued participation to keep the confrontation alive. By announcing that the conversation was over from the outset, you're effectively telling them that their attempts at engagement are null and void. The game ends before it has a chance to begin, stripping them of the very thing they seek most, an audience. In the next part, we'll dive into the mechanics behind why this line is so disarming and how you can use it to preserve your mental energy in scenarios ranging from petty family disagreements to full-blown workplace drama. We'll look at real-life examples of how such a seemingly simple statement can spare you from hours of frustration, heated retorts, or the emotional aftermath of a fruitless argument. As you'll see, sometimes the best way to handle hostility is to decline the invitation to wrestle altogether. Let's explore this conversation was over before it even started in depth. The underlying rationale is that you, not the other person, control whether or not an argument unfolds. When dealing with someone who's openly rude, combative, or dismissive, we often feel compelled to defend ourselves or set the record straight, especially if they've made misleading statements or outright insults. However, Stoic wisdom reminds us that not every conflict deserves our involvement. Some battles, particularly those fueled by disrespect, drain our energy without leading to productive outcomes. Declaring the conversation over before it began is essentially your way of saying, "I will not engage in a pointless back and forth with you." This stance takes away their power to reel you into an emotionally charged debate. The effect on the disrespectful individual can be jarring. In many cases, such people thrive on the prospect of making you uncomfortable or upset. They might roll out an escalating series of provocations, hoping each new barb will twist the knife deeper and force you to lash out. When you calmly deliver the line, "This conversation was over before it even started," you upend their strategy. Suddenly they are left with nowhere to go. They can't escalate if you've effectively shut down the exchange. They might try to continue, but you've already set a firm boundary. Moreover, you avoid the risk of looking petty or overly sensitive. Rather than stooping to their level, you're gracefully bowing out, preserving both your dignity and your time. The practicality of this conversation was over before it even started spans multiple scenarios. Let's say you're at a family gathering and a relative, perhaps emboldened by familiarity, begins making snide comments about your life choices. Instead of biting the bait, you calmly remark, "This conversation was over before it even started," and focus your attention elsewhere. The relative may try to push the issue, but you've signaled that you refuse to join in. If you remain calm and disengaged, they'll either have to move on or risk appearing obnoxiously insistent. In a work setting, you might face a colleague who consistently undermines your proposals or tries to provoke you in meetings. They roll their eyes or make sarcastic remarks the moment you begin speaking. By saying, "This conversation was over before it even started," you're essentially telling them that you recognize their tactic and have chosen not to play along. This tactic can be particularly effective if they rely on your defensiveness to justify further rudeness. When that defensiveness never appears, they're left without ammunition. Also, in situations where you suspect someone is deliberately looking for a fight to embarrass you in front of supervisors or clients, this approach showcases your professionalism and emotional intelligence. You're signaling to everyone present that you will not be shaken by petty baiting. Social media and online platforms are another arena where this line can be a lifesaver. Internet trolls thrive on prolonged conflicts, harvesting outrage and anger from unwitting users. When you decide from the outset that this conversation was over before it even started, you deny them the extended argument they so desperately crave. Instead of fueling the fire, you calmly leave the digital exchange, saving yourself the mental toll of a keyboard war. Such discipline is rare in online spaces, making it all the more powerful when you display it. Now let's examine the sixth comeback. "Thanks for your input. I'll be sure to forget it immediately." This line brilliantly conveys that you've heard the disrespectful remark, but you refuse to let it take root in your mind. It's a gentle form of dismissal, cloaked in politeness but laced with a pointed refusal to be influenced by the negativity. Often when someone is rude, they are trying to force their words into your head, hoping you'll stew over them, feel hurt by them, or doubt yourself because of them. By stating that you'll forget it immediately, you highlight that their comment is so insignificant to you that you won't even remember it 5 minutes later. The interplay between "thanks for your input" and "I'll be sure to forget it immediately" is what gives this line its impact. The opener, "thanks for your input," disarms the other person temporarily. They might interpret it as polite acknowledgement or a sign that you took them seriously, but the second half of the statement subverts that entirely, clarifying that their words have zero lasting value. It's a cunning way to show that you are not trying to dismiss them rudely, at least not blatantly, but rather to highlight just how inconsequential their insult or criticism truly is to you. It also puts them in a tricky spot. If they choose to escalate, they reveal themselves as unreasonably hostile. If they remain silent, they've effectively conceded the point. In workplaces, families, or any environment where you have ongoing relationships, employing "thanks for your input, I'll be sure to forget it immediately" can serve as a strong line of defense without permanently burning bridges. If a colleague routinely belittles your ideas, responding with this phrase avoids the trap of a drawn-out debate. You politely acknowledge that they've spoken, but you strip their words of any real importance. This subtle maneuver communicates that you are the gatekeeper of what you allow into your mental space, a concept resonant with Stoic teachings, which emphasize mastery over one's internal state rather than external factors. From a psychological standpoint, it also serves as a reminder to yourself not to dwell on the negativity. Sometimes we replay rude comments in our minds, letting them fester and grow disproportionately large. By outwardly stating you'll forget it, you reinforce the intention to genuinely let go. The very act of articulating this refusal can help you maintain emotional equanimity. After all, negativity lingers only if we grant it permission to do so. You are effectively giving yourself a cognitive anchor, something that reminds you not to hold on to toxic input. This line is especially useful in quick, sharp interactions, moments when someone tosses a snide remark in passing, perhaps expecting an emotional meltdown. By swiftly stating, "You'll forget their words," you shield your peace and move on. Consider, too, the vantage point of bystanders. When they see you handle rudeness with such poise, it can shape the way others perceive you. You come across as someone who refuses to be rattled by superficial slights. Colleagues, friends, or even strangers witnessing the exchange might actually find themselves admiring how adeptly you pivoted away from needless drama. It's a subtle signal of confidence, one that can foster respect and even a sense of safety among those who dislike conflict. They realize you are not the type to be manipulated or easily provoked, and that creates an environment where negative behaviors lose their audience. Finally, we arrive at the seventh potent line. You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself. This one hits differently from the others because it frames the offender's behavior as self-sabotaging. We've all encountered individuals who appear bent on ridiculing others, yet fail to see how ridiculous they themselves look in the process. Whether it's a loud coworker who thinks they're the sharpest person in the office, or a social acquaintance who constantly tries to dominate conversation through belittling remarks, these people often don't recognize that their actions reflect poorly on them. By stating, "You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself," you aren't stooping to call them a fool outright, although the implication is evident. Instead, you are pointing out that they're actively, and perhaps enthusiastically, undermining their own credibility or dignity. The phrase, "you seem really dedicated," emphasizes their effort, as if they've made a conscious choice to double down on foolish behavior. This can catch them off guard, because you're essentially placing the responsibility for their embarrassment directly into their hands. If they continue being rude, it only serves to reinforce the truth of your statement. So why is "you seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself" such an effective zinger? Psychologically, it shifts the spotlight from you to them. When someone hurls insults, they often try to position you as the fool or the target. This line disrupts that narrative by highlighting that their behavior is in fact the spectacle. It prompts a moment of self-reflection. Am I really making a fool of myself right now? Even if they deny it or lash out further, the doubt you've sown might linger. Furthermore, if there are onlookers, they may start seeing the rude person in a new light, realizing that, indeed, this individual is digging their own grave with every snarky remark. One real-life scenario might involve a friend who has grown complacent in their habit of belittling others, believing their humor or sarcasm elevates them socially. By calmly delivering this line, "You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself," you jolt them out of that bubble. It's no longer about you defending your ego, it's about them confronting the reality that they're the only one not laughing, or being laughed at rather than with. Similarly, in a professional setting, if a coworker tries to demean your contributions repeatedly, pointing out they're dedicated to making a fool of themselves can serve as a sharp wake-up call. In many office environments, reputation is everything, and no one wants to be the clown in the room. Your line succinctly reminds them that they're accomplishing precisely that. Having explored these 7 comebacks, each strategically crafted to handle specific forms of disrespect, you might wonder, which one should I rely on the most? The answer is that it depends on your context and your comfort level. What unifies them is a sense of calm assertiveness. None of these lines encourage screaming, cursing, or unleashing emotional tirades. Instead, they rely on wit, boundary setting, and a stoic respect for your own mental space. Whether you're telling someone they're entitled to their opinion, letting them know you'll forget their input, or pointing out that this conversation was over before it even started, you are consistently asserting your autonomy. On a broader philosophical level, these comebacks resonate with the Stoic principle of focusing on what is within your control. You cannot control whether people are rude or condescending. You can, however, control whether you engage in their negativity and how you respond to their attempts at provocation. By delivering these lines calmly and with confidence, you demonstrate mastery over your emotional states. A mastery that protects you from becoming entangled in fruitless disputes. Over time, it can also transform your environment. People who see they can't rattle you easily often shift their tactics or find another target. Eventually, they might even tone down their rudeness, realizing it yields zero results. If you found these insights valuable and want to continue cultivating this level of emotional resilience, remember that I share a free weekly newsletter focused on Stoicism, self-improvement, and strategies to navigate life's challenges with wisdom. The link for that is below, along with my contact information for any brands seeking to collaborate on meaningful projects. Think of these comebacks as tools in your personal growth toolkit, each one carefully designed to neutralize disrespect and keep you firmly in command of your own peace. The more you practice, the more naturally they'll come to mind when you need them. After all, true strength is not about overpowering someone else. It's about never allowing them to overpower you. And in the end, that's the kind of resilience that truly carries you forward in life. Ultimately, dealing with disrespect isn't about sinking to someone else's level. It's about rising above it with calm strength and smart responses. Each of the 7 strategies we've covered today can help you maintain control, project confidence, and even subtly teach others about mutual respect. Remember, true power lies in your ability to stay composed when tested and to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Now it's your turn. Have you used similar tactics before? Which strategy resonated most with you? I'd love to hear your personal experiences and suggestions. Drop your comments below and let's start a conversation that builds stronger, healthier interactions. And don't forget, subscribe for more empowering content designed to help you thrive and live your best life.